There are secrets people take to the grave, and there are secrets that the grave refuses. March 12, 2024. Nuru Mansion, East Africa. A 61-year-old housekeeper finds an envelope hidden behind ledgers for 40 years. Inside it, the truth that could destroy a $3 billion empire. But here's what's going to keep you up tonight. The billionairess who built orphanages was buying children. The philanthropist who saved thousands destroyed hundreds. And the housekeeper who discovered everything had only one impossible choice. This is not a story about good versus evil. It's about something far more terrifying, good and evil in the same person, in the same act, in the same moment. What would you do if you discovered that the woman who employed you for 33 years, the woman you trusted, the woman whose funeral you just organized, was simultaneously a saint and a criminal? Worse still, what if revealing the truth meant destroying the very people she saved? Welcome to the most disturbing moral dilemma you'll hear this year. This is not clickbait. This is not fiction. This is based on real cases of African philanthropy from the 1980s to 2020. During the next 50 minutes, you'll witness how one woman built 47 schools with money from illegal adoptions, how she saved 2,000 children from poverty by stealing 300 from their biological families, how an ordinary housekeeper became the only person standing between truth and the collapse of an entire system feeding thousands, and how justice, when it finally comes, never seems fair to everyone. Before we begin, subscribe to this channel. This is an investigation that took months to build, and you won't want to miss the next stories nobody else is telling. Ana Maria Okoro held that paper and felt the weight of 40 years of lives in her hands. 1,000 children fed, 100 families destroyed. How do you weigh that? How do you choose? This is the story of the envelope that unearthed an empire, of the housekeeper who refused to stay silent, and of the dead billionairess who left instructions for her own destruction. Because sometimes the truth doesn't set you free. It traps you in a choice nobody should have to make. Based on real events, East Africa, 1984 to 2024. Names changed, truth preserved. She opened the envelope at 2:47 p.m. By 2:48, nothing would ever be the same. Before I show you what Ana found, you need to understand one thing about secrets. They're not what you imagine. They're not hidden bombs waiting to explode. They're more like slow-release poison, seeping into the bloodstream of a family, of an institution, of an entire city. Amina Masego died at 6:12 a.m. on March 12th, at 73 years old. Pancreatic cancer. Peaceful death, the newspapers said. Legacy of charity, the obituary said. Billionaire philanthropist dies at 73. Africa loses its Mother Teresa. 47 schools, 12 hospitals, Masego's empire of good. What the newspapers didn't say? Amina spent her last 6 months writing. Not memoirs, not a will. A confession. Here's something criminologists know, but nobody talks about. People who commit complex crimes for decades rarely keep it all in their heads. They document. Not out of arrogance, but because the human brain can't sustain cognitive dissonance forever. When you save a child in the morning and forge documents for another in the afternoon for 40 years, something inside you needs to reconcile that. So you write, you justify, you confess. Ana Maria Okoro, 61 years old, 33 years of service. Born in a rural village, basic education, hands calloused from 4 decades cleaning for the wealthy. She wasn't a detective, wasn't a journalist, was just a woman who noticed things others didn't notice, like that tiny ridge where the ledger's spine had been chewed by mice, like that space too narrow behind the bookshelf. 2:47 p.m. The broom handle hits something. A book slides and falls. An envelope that had been waiting 40 years for the right hands. Or wrong hands, depends on how you see it. Here's the moment, the exact moment where everything changes. She could leave the envelope there, call the estate manager, wash her hands, literally and metaphorically, of the responsibility. But she doesn't do that. Know why? Because for 33 years, Anna moved as invisible. And invisible people see everything, hear everything, and keep it all, waiting for the moment when all those little inconsistencies finally make sense. The wax breaks. The paper unfolds. The first line, "To whomever must know when I can no longer say so myself." And here is where the horror begins. It's not blood horror. It's not monster horror. It's something worse. It's the horror of discovering that the good person did bad things for the right reasons. That the bad person saved lives while destroying others. It's the horror of moral ambiguity. When you read the first page, when you see the names, the dates, the places, you realize this isn't just one woman's secret. It's the secret of an entire system, of an economy, of a philosophy about how to save people. Let me explain something the media never tells properly about charity scandals. When you read philanthropist embezzled funds, your brain pictures a mustache-twirling villain counting money. But reality, it's infinitely more disturbing. Because what Anna discovered wasn't a simple theft. It was a machine. A perfectly lubricated machine that transformed desperation into capital. Works like this. Step 1. Identify vulnerable children in conflict zones, war orphans, children of single mothers in extreme poverty, children with complicated family situations. Step 2. Offer families what seems like salvation. Your daughter will have education, health, future. You're saving her. Technically, it's adoption. Legally, it's a gray area, exploited for decades. Step 3. Transport across borders with documents that are 80% legitimate and 20% fabricated. Enough to pass customs. Enough to create new identities. Step 4. Here's where it gets interesting. Some children go to wealthy adoptive families in the West. Desperate families who pay $40,000, $50,000, $80,000. They think it's agency fees. It is. But other children, they stay. They're placed in Amina's own schools and orphanages, photographed, filmed, used in marketing materials to attract more donations. You understand the perverse genius of this? She literally used the children she saved to finance saving more children. A self-sustaining cycle of charity and crime. But here's what Anna reads that makes her stomach turn. It's not the numbers. It's not the accounts. It's one line. One single line in the middle of page 3. I could not tell my daughter the truth because the truth would have stolen a life from her. Lila, the heiress, the billionaire's perfect daughter, Oxford graduate, diplomat, NGO executive, the public face of the philanthropic empire. According to the letter, Lila was one of the first, irregularly adopted in 1985, biological family in Eritrea during civil war, documents optimized, history rewritten. And now Anna is holding the real identity of a 39-year-old woman, an identity that could destroy not just her legal inheritance, but her entire psyche. Psychologists call this adoptive identity fracture. When you discover at 40 that your entire life is a constructed narrative, that your name isn't your name, your story isn't your story, the rate of mental collapse
is 67%. Of suicide attempts, 31%. Does Anna know this? No. Anna didn't even finish high school. But she knows something deeper, more visceral, that some truths don't liberate, they shatter. So she does what any ordinary person would do when receiving an impossible weight. She hides, sews the envelope into the lining of her apron, and tries to keep living. But here's the thing about secrets this size. They don't stay hidden. They leak. Not through bad intentions, through energy shifts. The cook, Miri, looks at Anna. You look like you've seen a ghost. And here's the first decision. The first of many that will define not just the fate of the Masego Empire, but thousands of lives depending on it. Does she tell? Does she hide? Does she burn? Because any choice has bodies. Any choice has blood. If you're enjoying this investigation, hit that like button now. It helps the algorithm deliver this type of content to more people who need to hear these stories. 72 hours after finding the letter, Anna hasn't slept more than 11 hours total. Not because she has insomnia, but because every time she closes her eyes, she sees all the simultaneous consequences of every choice. And here's something people who've never had real power don't understand. When you've been invisible your entire life, when you've never made a decision that affected more than your own family, and suddenly you're holding the fate of thousands in your hands, it doesn't feel like empowerment. It feels like terror. She needs allies, not powerful allies. Allies who saw, who know, who kept their own silences. Juma drove for Amina for 41 years. Drivers see everything. They're not looked at, but they look. They take people secretly. They catch conversations in rearview mirrors. And one night in 1992, after 2 brandies, Amina said something to Juma he never forgot. Beginnings are messy, Juma. You build what you need to survive, and pray that good outweighs evil when they do the accounting. Juma in the present says, I knew she wasn't a saint, but I also knew those children at Masego School. Without her, they'd be dead or sold to something worse. So I drove and stayed quiet. And here begins the construction of truth. It's not a flash of revelation. It's work. It's conversation by conversation, testimony by testimony. Anna speaks with Bio, the gardener, who saw children arrive at night. Non-existent documents, unanswered questions. Zuri, former secretary, who kept copies because she felt she'd need them one day. Amal, the facilitator at the port, who admits, they wanted pretty paperwork. Parts of the money went elsewhere. You know what happens when story is more necessary than truth. And gradually the map emerges, not of a monster, but of a system, of a rescue economy that worked because nobody wanted to look too closely. Here's where the story becomes psychological thriller, because when Anna finally takes the evidence to the family lawyer, she encounters something more frightening than villainy. She encounters civilized bureaucracy. Mr. Chando leafs through documents, face impassive. Anna, estates this size always have complexities, trusts, beneficiaries, conditions. What you found may require investigation, but we need prudence. We can't make a spectacle. Prudence, the favorite word of those wanting to bury truths. And Anna understands immediately. He won't act. Not because he's corrupt, but because the system has built-in immunity. Lawyers, boards, wealth managers, each layer exists to cushion scandal, to transform crimes into irregularities, to make corrections without admission, to protect the machine, not the people. And here's the moment where Anna could give up. Hand everything over, let the powerful decide. But something changed in her. For 33 years, she was trained to disappear, not to question, to accept that people like her don't make history. They clean up after it. But when you're holding in your hands the truth everyone wants hidden, you realize something fundamental about power. It doesn't come from money, doesn't come from position. It comes from knowing and choosing what to do with it. Anna begins her own investigation, copies documents in the dead of night, meets Zuri in a secret gazebo, Takes a slow, monotonous bus ride to the coastal port city. Interviews 'em all. But investigation attracts attention, and attention attracts pressure. Emery, a board member, approaches Anna in the hallway. "You found something, didn't you? That letter. You should hand it to the family."
There are better ways to handle this. You could keep your job, have security. Bribes don't always come as money. Sometimes they come as preservation. Don't stir, don't suffer, don't change anything. Anna looks at him with a firm voice for the first time. "I didn't come to keep my job. I came to ensure what is true can be confronted without crushing those who aren't responsible." And here begins the war. Silent, civilized, but war. Anna's trunk is ransacked. Cigarette butt left in her room as warning. Threatening looks in the hallway. Whispered conversations that stop when she enters. But Anna has something Emery didn't expect. It's not heroic courage. It's something simpler and more powerful. She has decades of experience being underestimated. And underestimated people know how to hide better than anyone. She sews the documents into the lining of a curtain in the chapel, the most sacred place, the place nobody would profane with a search. 5 days after the funeral, Lila Mossago returns, 39 years old, Oxford, diplomatic career, the public face of the empire. She doesn't know yet, doesn't know that the housekeeper who raised her is holding her very self, her real birth certificate, her origin, her identity. And here's the moment that breaks everything. It's not dramatic, it's not confrontation, it's human. Anna sees, for the first time with total clarity, that Lila isn't an accomplice. She's a victim, a successful victim, a privileged victim, but a victim. Anna changed this woman's diapers, taught her to tie shoes, cleaned vomit from flu, heard teenage secrets. For 34 years, Anna was more mother than employee. And now she has to decide. Tell? Hand over? Destroy the psyche of someone she loves? They meet in the hallway. Lila asks with soft but defensive voice, "Anna, they said there are documents, old ones. Did you see them?" Anna takes a deep breath. "I found a letter, in the office. Documents, old ledgers." Lila's fingers grip her portfolio. If something about adoptions or investments is wrong, there could be legal trouble. Foundations could close. Scholarships could be canceled. People could lose everything. And here's the dilemma naked and raw. It's not philosophical. It's mathematical horror. If Anna exposes, 300 families might discover children were stolen. 2,000 saved children might lose benefits when the foundation collapses. 47 schools might close. 12 clinics might lose funding. Workers like her might become unemployed. If Anna hides, perpetuates criminal system, denies truth to destroyed families, allows model to continue with future philanthropists, becomes accomplice to decades of crime. There's no right choice. There's only less wrong choice. Lila, vulnerable voice for the first time. "Anna, I never wanted to be the public face of anything. I wanted to teach, work in clinics, but I remained as the named one. If this is true, if what my mother did is true, it changes everything. Does it change who I am?" And Anna sees, in that moment, the true cost of truth. It's not prison. It's not scandal. It's the moment when someone you love discovers they don't know themselves. If you're following along so far, comment below. What would you do in Anna's place? Would you tell the truth or protect Lila? I want to know your opinion. Anna spends 3 nights without sleeping properly, not from fear of retaliation, but because she's calculating how to do the impossible, expose truth without destroying the innocent. And here's where the story becomes about strategy, about how ordinary people without institutional power can still move mountains. She can't simply hand everything to the newspapers.
That would create a spectacle that would hurt the most vulnerable first. She can't hand everything to the lawyers. They'll bury it, negotiate in silence, and nothing will structurally change. So Anna does something brilliant. She builds a coalition, not of the powerful, of witnesses, of people who saw pieces of truth and were waiting for someone brave enough to put them together. Zuri brings copies of documents she kept for 5 years, not out of malice, but because she knew they'd be needed one day. She brings adoption papers dated decades ago, a record of an agency in a coastal city across the ocean, stamps suggesting travel, and perhaps a broker who handled complex arrangements. Zuri says, "I left because I feared the new board would turn her life into acceptable narratives. I kept some things. After she died, they sent me severance and a polite note. I thought about burning what I had. Then I started thinking about the children Amina sheltered, those who might be hurt if truth was only used to protect those with reputations to lose." Together, Anna and Zuri visit a former bank employee who retired last year. He provides microfilmed statements, obscure printouts requiring patience and willingness to be tedious. They take a slow, monotonous bus trip to the coastal port city where they meet Amal, who worked for the broker who orchestrated adoptions and transfers. Amal speaks with the blunt rhythm of someone who sold services and then watched the world reconfigure around the fees she collected. They wanted pretty documentation. They wanted a story to show. Then parts of money went elsewhere. You know what happens when a story is more necessary than truth. People make papers fit. Each new voice adds pieces matching the ledger. A notation here corresponding to a ship manifest there. A personal letter connecting an account number to a name now erased from public biographies. The more Anna maps, the less tidy the picture becomes. Not a single monstrous crime, but a decades-long concealment strategy involving many hands, some complicit for gain, others complicit for love or fear. Back at the estate, the atmosphere begins changing in small, visible ways. Lila meets with the board more often. Trustees come and go with polite severity.
The estate manager, Sefu, who always wore his authority like a vest, becomes impatient and thin. At night, staff whisper in kitchens and under stairwells. Trust is brittle. When suspicion sets in, it cracks into gossip, and gossip is often the first act of ruin. Mr. Chando, when Anna finally takes the copies to him under pretext of needing counsel for staff, listens and then folds the papers, his careful face even more composed than usual. He doesn't leap to dramatic pronouncements. He does what lawyers do, catalogs options. We can petition the court for interim freezing of trusts and for forensic audit. You must understand, Anna, that courts will require prima facie showing that transfers were irregular and that there's substantial risk of asset dissipation. If we can show documents exist which, on their face, suggest misdirection of funds, a judge may grant temporary relief. Anna asks, and if the judge grants it? Then an independent auditor will be appointed. There will be hearings. The press will come whichever path we choose not to control. Anna isn't naive. She watched small injustices slide past under cover of the family name. But she also knows people in the city who depend on the estate's modest contributions. If trusts are frozen, tomorrow's soup kitchen might not open. The ethical geometry of her choices is a tight, delicate thing. Uncovering truth could protect future generations from deception, but also risk immediate harm to the vulnerable. Anna says, "You need to tell me the worst and the best. I need to know what I'm asking for." Mr. Chando answers soberly. Worst, extended litigation, wide public scandal, potential loss of funding for dependent programs. Best, transparency, potential restitution if misdirection is proved, and eventual restructuring honoring what Madam Amina publicly intended. It depends on motive, on bank records, on trustee cooperation. The decision rising from that conversation isn't a single dramatic choice, but a sequence.
Gather enough corroboration to persuade a court investigation is warranted. Present evidence discreetly to avoid immediate collapse of institutions people depend on. Create a plan for interim support of dependents. It's strategic, slow, and political. Meanwhile, a reporter named Nia, the freelance journalist who called earlier, begins inquiring more insistently. Nia has a reputation for careful work. She's not a tabloid hunter. When Anna speaks with her for the first time, she does so without revealing everything. Journalists, Anna learned, are allies if trusted. They're also accelerants if not managed. Nia says on the phone, "You understand the risks. You want truth told, but you want to ensure it doesn't become a roar crushing the small and innocent. I can hold for a time. I can use what I have to push for independent oversight rather than spectacle. But I need something. Documents, corroboration, a timeline." Nia's tone is of someone determined to make facts matter.
Anna feels she's found alignment, a journalist willing to wait for structure rather than immediate clicks. She shares selected documents with Nia under strict terms. The photocopies Zuri provided, a sworn statement from a mall, the microfilm registry from the bank clerk. Nia promises to withhold publication pending an agreed plan prioritizing community safeguards. Share this video with someone who needs to understand how power systems really work. This is information that can change perspectives. Meanwhile, voices in the house grow louder. Lila, whose public persona was a kind of measured benevolence, oscillates between fury and fear. She arranges meeting after meeting, with trustees, with donors, with children's program coordinators. At first, she tries containing things within family frameworks, private audits, revised accounting, an attempt to reframe certain gift allocations as normal philanthropic opacity. The board, however, has its divisions. A faction of trustees, led by an executive named Emery, advocates immediate money transfers to make turmoil less profitable for outside claimants. Another faction argues for a veil of discretion. Emery proves to be a catalytic presence. He's run parts of the holding company for years and has a practical bluntness that sometimes passes for honesty. When Anna meets him by accident in a sunlit corridor, he says without preamble, "You found something, didn't you? You have that letter. You should give it to the family." Anna holds her portfolio at her side. Emery's smile has the economy of someone used to buying silence. "There are better ways to handle this. If you give it to us, we reorganize, we create interim funds, we avoid the press. You get to keep your job. You get security." Anna had imagined the sentence before Emery finished it. Bribes don't always come wrapped in money. They often come wrapped in preservation. "I didn't come to keep my job," Anna says. "I came to make sure what is true can be confronted without crushing people who aren't responsible for choices made." Emery's face tightens. "You could be a problem, Anna, for everyone." Threats move like weather on the estate. A low-pressure system building in staff quarters, a certain metallic taste at breakfast. Someone following orders ransacks the accounts room in a midnight search for papers. Anna wakes to find her trunk moved, a thin smell of smoke from a cigarette butt tucked in the ashtray in her tiny servant room, an unspoken warning. She's hidden her copies in a place she trusts, sewn into the hem of an old curtain that hung in the chapel. The idea of sacred cloth as hiding place feels brazenly appropriate. She speaks with Juma and finds him steady. He was the driver who knew how to watch someone without being seen. "They'll try to make you small," he says in the kitchen, passing tea into her cup. "They'll think they can scare you. Don't be surprised by that. But don't be surprised either at who will help. Some will surprise you." Who will surprise her turns out to be Lila, but not at first. Lila's early reaction was to accuse Anna of betrayal. "You'll take papers to whom?" she demands in the hallway one evening, her voice sharp enough to cut through the hush after dinner.